That was like an opening in my consciousness, rather than what everyone else wants you to do, what you think will get you more views, go off the intuition, go off God. You have to actively ask yourself, what do I want? As a self-respecting person that validates myself, what do I want to do? The first step was healing the negative thinking patterns, the anxiety, getting to a level of control. From there, I built my YouTube channel, and the next 3.5 years, I had a ton of personal success.
Even though you've done the internal work and you think this is your path, you're constantly evaluating the road that you're taking to make sure that you're on the right road.
Crypto, Shopify, SMMA, influencer, those ideas are the worst ideas, in my opinion. We all know what we should be doing. We all know the things that are good for us that we simply aren't doing. The stuff that we see and interact with and feel and touch and our senses interact with is like 0.00001% of what really exists.
Quick one before we jump into this podcast. Do me a solid favor, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below this video. If you're looking to remove images, videos, search results, or fake accounts online, go to contentremoval.com. But don't take my word for it. Here's Hormozy.
Frank, you're a legend. I just saw this. Layla also thinks you're a legend, which in my mind means you're... which means you're a double legend in my mind. If you get my wife to think you're a legend, then you're extra cool in my mind. Dude, thank you so much, genuinely. That was such a pain.
Welcome back to the Frankie podcast. Today, guys, I'm bringing you another extraordinary guest all the way from Malibu. And I'm telling you now, this lad has set up Tribe, he's set up Maxi, he's founded both, and he's also been a key advisor in the rise of Hoobe. Mr. Arlin Moore, welcome to the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Frankie. I'm very excited. It's funny when you say Malibu alone. I don't think about it sounding from like a UK accent. It sounds so foreign and like mystical. But
mate, do you know what? I'm guilty. I've been to a lot of places in the world. I've not been to America yet. And I can't believe I've got to 34 and not been to America yet. I've been everywhere else.
You got to get over here, bro.
So this year we definitely have to do an in-person podcast in the US. So I've put it down on in my mind that we've got to do it. But obviously you've had an interesting journey. Obviously you've blown up on YouTube. You've been creating content a long time. But where I want to start with this is obviously I was reading a little bit of your backstory and I was understanding about your childhood growing up, that obviously your dad was medicated on to deal with his temper and obviously having a high temper. And I just wanted to understand obviously what were the key drivers in your youth growing up as to get you to where you are now, so to speak.
Yeah. So my dad was diagnosed with bipolar depression, and was on lithium for, I don't know, 20 years or so. And it's not something that I've spoken to him about, before I was born even, but I do know he had a lot of like struggles with depression for a long time, even before I was born. And how that affected me growing up, I mean, there were a lot of having a dad that's kind of either really happy or like really down, really angry. There was definitely a lot of disorder and arguments and fights about money or fights about just anything that the mind of an unconscious person can conjure up, and it was very, very transformative and definitely shaped a lot of my childhood in a very good way. I look back on it as like one of the best things that ever happened to me. But yeah, it was I think looking back, the younger I was, the more like kind of crazier things actually happened. And there were some points where he had to get taken away and put in hospital when I was like, I think 4 or 5. He had like a manic episode, and yeah, I don't have a lot of memories of that. My mom tried to shield me from it, but things did get better over the years, and something we could even go into, like as I got into high school, I started to develop similar symptoms, which really scared my mom because, she was always.
Do you think that you kind of picked that up as a child because obviously it was your programming?
Yeah, I think I did. And that was my mom's biggest fear was, my dad had this instability. And as a kid, I was a very bright, happy kid, but around like 13, 14, really 15, I started to exhibit like similar symptoms, like the moods and the negative thinking patterns and getting super down. And I think that really scared her. And
how did you kind of go? Obviously, you've noticed now looking back that you exist, and it's always easier to connect the dots going backwards. But you noticed that you were exhibiting a fair few of the patterns that perhaps your dad had, and was starting to act on these patterns in your daily life, and starting to manifest in your reality, so to speak, the things that were probably happening in your dad's reality. So you were essentially living the life as if it was your dad's life. How did you go about becoming conscious enough to be able to break that pattern?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's because we could call it a specific disorder like bipolar depression or anxiety or, any number of like specific medical diagnoses, but it's all the same thing. It's all just unconsciousness, right? Or a lack of a certain level of like enlightenment. And my dad and I exhibited the same qualities. At the time, I didn't see any connection to it. It was only like, honestly, in the last like year or two that I really realized, oh wow, that definitely was like that. My dad's unconsciousness was a direct reflection of my unconsciousness. And how did I get out of it? Basically, it's interesting because, like, as I said, it was one of the best things that happened to me, like having my dad go through these kind of episodes, because it turned me into a fixer, right? Like as a kid, when your parents are arguing and they're fighting about money or anything, and you're an only child, you get in the middle of it and you don't want them to divorce, and you want to save your parents' love. And that's what I've tried to do so many times. My parents, I remember like I'd be in bed at like 9 p.m., like 10, 11, 12 years old. I'd hear like shit getting thrown across the room, like as a little kid. And I would like come downstairs and try to stop my mom and dad from arguing. And so like that gets baked into you as a person, like trying to save people's love, right, for each other, save your parents' love. And because I became so obsessed with that, when I started to have problems, I became obsessed with like fixing myself. So it took me a long time, but I eventually discovered Eckhart Tolle, meditation, mental reprogramming, the idea that
the power of now,
the power of now, the idea that because my dad had always kind of told me, I have depression or I have this disorder, I have to take medication. That's just how it is. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. If you're depressed forever. There's also there was that, and then there's the programming of the media. My parents would throw on the 6:30 news every night as we were getting ready for dinner. And what does the news tell you? The depression stats are rising. Every commercial in between every news segment is a commercial for some antidepressant. And it's like, if you have thoughts of suicide, then you should take this, And yeah,
it's just programming, isn't it? It's that constant program that you were subjected to as a child. You're pretty much describing the life of 90% of the world. And what the key thing you said there was, you can call it bipolar, you can call it ADHD, you can call all these different things under all these different umbrellas, but the key word that you said there was it's unconsciousness. Like people are not conscious to the fact of what true enlightenment is, and that's why the power of now and books like that you mentioned by Eckhart Tolle are so powerful, and everybody should read them, because I'm actually listening to that at the moment. It's the third or fourth time I've listened to it, but every time I listen to it, I get something new out of it. Like this, a whole different approach, I didn't understand that bit last time, but now I resonate with that. Is that a book you keep going back to?
I keep going back to Eckhart Tolle. I love his YouTube videos. But I will say, as I became more and more obsessed with fixing my own unconsciousness and raising up to a level where I can have some space and distance around my thoughts and be able to control them, I was listening to The Power of Now every day. Like, this is when I was around 18, 19. I probably listened to the audio book for The Power of Now. Like, it was just my morning routine. It was just listen to The Power of Now as I walked to class as I was in college. And that definitely was that book was a major part of my transformation that I then passed on to my dad and got him doing some of the same practices, reading Power of Now, meditating in the morning, journaling, gratitude, that kind of stuff. And what's funny about it is like within like, and I don't want to say this is a remedy for everyone with depression because everyone has different levels, but within like 3 weeks, he was noticeably better. And within 3 to 6 months, he was completely off the medication. And it was just like...
That just shows you the power of your mind, both consciously and subconsciously, when you indoctrinate and program it with positive affirmations, thoughts, audio books, podcasts. When you start to throw that stuff in at a consistent basis, you start to change your external reality once you work on your internal reality. So what point then do you remember this specific point it was? I mean, I know these things happen at 1% daily, but do you remember a specific point where you were sat there and thought, you know what, I'm not happy with how my life looks right now. There's something that needs to change. There's something that needs to move.
So the way that it happened for me, it was the thing that bothered me the most was, there were really two things. It was the repetitive negative thinking patterns, which the negative thoughts that I was having were just like, it was almost like the more negative the thought, the more scared I was that I had something fundamentally wrong with me, chemically wrong in my brain or something like that. And the more I had those thoughts, the more anxiety attacks would come about. I would like get this jolt of energy in the middle of the night. My heart would be beating out of my chest, or it would feel like it was going to stop beating. And so it was like anxiety attacks, negative thinking. Like the negative thinking, the extent of it was like I'd be driving to school every day, and the thought would be like, why don't you just pull over to a tree? And then I would think about that thought and be like, does this mean I'm depressed? I'd overanalyze it. And then I guess, honestly, probably the worst part was like not wanting to tell anybody, because I didn't want to be medicated. I didn't want to believe that there could have been something wrong with me. And so how I came out of it was really around like when I was 18. I remember there was like 4 days in a row where it was particularly bad. It was like the most crushing negative thoughts and depression and anxiety that I felt in a condensed period of time. And then one day I remember sitting at my dining table at my parents' house, and I kind of just asked myself like all these negative thoughts, like what if I could just stop thinking? And I kind of asked myself that question. What if I just stopped thinking? And I sat there, and for like the first time I feel like in my life, I just wasn't thinking. And I was like, oh my God, like that was kind of scary. And I had like Eckhart Tolle talks about the gap between thoughts. I hadn't read Eckhart Tolle yet, but that was the realization I had. I was like, wow, okay, there's something there. Shortly after that, and I guess you could look at it as, an opening. That was like an opening in my consciousness. Whereas before it was super dense with negative thoughts. Now it was like, oh, there's an opening for presence to come in.
You created what they term as space.
Yes. And shortly after that, I just started to discover a lot of things that ended up really helping me transform. There were a few TED Talks. One of them was actually the OG Ty Lopez, his original TED Talk that like went super viral, and he's talking about how reading books can like make you smarter, which today, modern times, like most people are like, yeah, obviously, but personal development was not as mainstream in 2015. You know, there's definitely like a group of people who are into personal development, of course, but now it's all over TikTok. You know, Tate really like blew it up. Of course, Iman, right? And guys like yourself who have, you know, podcasts and audiences that understand that there is a world where people are really working on themselves. But in 2015, I'm sure you remember, it wasn't nearly as like mainstream as it is now.
I suppose in 2015 you had like the pivotal ones like the Tony Robbins, like the Ty Lopez's, and like those early days internet marketing world were kind of putting that content out there. But obviously now we've got more. There's so much noise in the marketplace. It's almost gone polar opposite. There's so much noise. It's like now you're kind of thinking, well, who do you go to? Where do you go? What information do you take? Because someone will say this and then someone will say polar opposite just for the views and the engagement and everything else, just to be out there. But obviously, like, you can't look past people like Eckhart Tolle, because that book and the impact it's already had on me, listening to it 3 times, and you've listened to it probably 16 different times, you know, through your life. It's the impact of that book alone. It just makes you just pause for a moment and kind of understand that there's more to you than just being on the go all the time and trying to think your way out of stuff. You know, sometimes it's not about thinking about more stuff. It's actually about going inward and looking within and seeing what space you can create, so you can actually go and create something that you actually physically want in the exterior world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you took on so many patterns of your dad on a subconscious level that you probably didn't even realize. Would that be a fair statement? Yeah,
I definitely didn't realize. And it was a combination of my mom and my dad, because, you know, I don't want to I mean, my mom was obviously like the more protector, trying to kind of create stability. But I'm not saying, you know, my mom was the problem, but it was both my parents together, because I was trying to fix the relationship, right? And yes, the initial patterns that I was exhibiting were probably more related to my dad's. But then that also led down the line, you know, several years down the line, I got into a relationship that was very much like the relationship that I saw when I was a kid. You know, I had like...
Wow. So now you started to live in your reality after you've kind of raised your consciousness and worked through one pattern, and kind of so you basically use the power of now and books like that to get out your head, so you could create space, so you could create a different reality. So you attract this girl into your life, and now all of a sudden you're hit with the next shadow that you've got to answer, and that next shadow is you're now living the relationship, the similar type as what you've grown up with.
Yeah, and it wasn't the same, but there was lots of turmoil for sure. Yeah.
So how do you think that was created, and how did you identify it?
The relationship?
Yeah. How do you, obviously I know obviously how you created the relationship, but how did you identify that this is going in a similar pattern to what I've already seen before?
Yeah, so there was some space, right? And as you mentioned, like, the first step was, healing the negative thinking patterns, the anxiety, getting to a level of control. From there, you know, I built my YouTube channel, and the next 3.5 years, I had a ton of personal success, and you know, grew hundreds of thousands of followers across my Instagram and YouTube. And then, yeah, about 4 years later was kind of definitely the next challenge, where I got into a relationship with a girl that that became like toxic. And part of the reason it became toxic was, she was very beautiful. She was somewhat, publicly like famous on social media. I also met her when I was in Australia. So I was 10,000 miles away from home. And I also went there. It was like a study abroad program. And I went there not knowing anybody. So I had to kind of build my social circle from scratch in a new continent, and in a somewhat of a new culture. And I fall in love with this girl who also was open to being on my YouTube videos. I was getting blasted with positive validation, right? My followers are like, oh my God, Arlin's got a girlfriend now. This is so cool. Views are going through the roof because like couples channels go crazy. And
so you're getting that feedback loop of keep this going, even though I don't particularly think it's completely right. I'm going to ignore what I think is wrong because it keeps this validation loop going.
Exactly. So, I had my followers commenting on all these videos, views going up. My boys back home are like, bro, this girl's hot. Like, good for you, man. Like, and I just ignored every red flag of the relationship, which, by the way, you can't attract someone with red flags unless you yourself have equal red flags. Like, that's how the universe works. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. If you attract a narcissist and you think that they have all these red flags, you're a people pleaser, but you also have all these red flags. And so that's exactly what happened. I was very focused on the validation of how everything looked, and I ignored this person's values, character, nature, and countless other things that we were not aligned on. And it just led down, again, a relationship that was very tumultuous, where we're arguing all the time. And at a certain point, I was like, this is similar to what I grew up with. And yeah, it was a very tough time for sure. It's when you get locked into that, it's nearly impossible to get out unless you have someone that really cares about you that can help you get out. And that, fortunately, I had that. But some guys, man, like some guys commit suicide in relationships like that. Like some men, like the stats on this are, guys who get broken up with or cheated on or who are in an abusive relationship with a girl who's more narcissistic, controlling, can and often do commit suicide. So it's a very dark place to be.
And also for someone that like yourself, you were having so much success in the public domain on the external front, obviously with the YouTube channel and everything that was blown up for you, all the content you're creating. And when you're in that space, you can kind of not know when you start creating content online, you can kind of not know who your friends are, kind of things in a lot of areas of your life, and things start moving around and people start trying to pull you down in any ways possible. Is that something that you went through as well, like from that perspective? So you kind of felt like you was on your own, and then this relationship manifested in that space because there wasn't anything else you could put there.
I never really felt like my friends were people I couldn't trust. I always did really well with my friends and with the people that I surrounded myself with. This relationship helped me to strengthen my friendships even further and truly choose people that were aligned with the same values and that really, really supported me. As an example, like my friends in college, when I was building my channel, like they were definitely supportive when I first started because it wasn't very big, but as it grew, they became less and less supportive. They were not on the same frequency. They were like, okay, Arlin's got his YouTube thing and that's great and all, like, but we got corporate jobs we got to get to. And I did have some friends that were kind of in the same mindset, but they also weren't quite as supportive. It wasn't until this relationship destroying me that I really rebuilt everything. And this actually bridges into Hoobe. I met the founders of Hoobe and became an advisor. And those guys, like Hoobe, the company Hoobe, and working with Jordan, the founders, Jordan and Casson, I met them shortly after this relationship, and I was able to see to the core, these guys, these are real friends. Like, these guys actually care about me. And there's a simple test that you can really know who your real friends are. And by real friends, I mean like friends that would do anything for you, friends that truly want you to win. And it was when I was posting I ended this relationship, came out, I meet these guys, Jordan and Casson, who are building this company called Hoobe, and I start posting videos again. And for the first time in my life, I had these guys, Jordan and Casson, I noticed that they would go on their Instagram. I post a new video, they would screenshot it, put it on their Instagram story, and put the link to it for their followers. They'd be like, yo, go check out our friend Arlin's new video. And that, I never had that. Like, to have someone who actually wants you to win, that they will support the thing that there's nothing more in the world you care about, and they don't get anything out of promoting it other than just being your friend, right? So yeah, the relationship, but to answer your question in summary, I didn't really struggle with having like real people around me, with the social media stuff, but the relationship essentially destroying my ego. And we can get into what happened if you're interested, but destroying my ego completely helped me really reframe like, what does a true supportive friend look like? And now like my reality is 10 times better than it was before.
I think it's interesting that you said about destroying your ego, because I've had a few parts in my life where I've had to lose parts of myself, where the ego gets pulled down and you have to lose it, has to break away and get dismantled so that you can see certain things and address certain other shadows that you haven't perhaps seen yet. Is that kind of how it went for you as well? You kind of the ego getting disbanded allowed you that space so you could see all these other little fragments as well that you kind of needed to work on to kind of create more revenue online, to create more friendships, more see the real reality of life kind of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically what happened was this girl, we had this public relationship, I'm showing it publicly, and I can obviously edit our videos, edit out all the parts where we're fighting and arguing and, bad stuff's happening, and just show the good parts. And so there was that public thing. And then she ended up, long story short, cheating on me with a very famous celebrity that was then put in like the Hollywood Fix, paparazzi, Getty Images. And she ended up even posting a photo with this guy kind of out of the blue and deleting all of our pictures that we'd ever posted together on her page. My followers obviously knew who she was. They saw what happened. It was just all of that validation that I was getting right in the beginning that we were talking about, of like, oh, Arlin's got this hot girlfriend, like, look at him, that was just destroyed, right? And that, again, that was my ego. That was destroyed.
And obviously you'd attached a part of yourself to dating this model.
Yeah.
Right? That's now become a part of you.
Yeah. So just destroyed. And that really showed me like, okay, next person I pick as a partner needs to have a bit better values. I have to look beyond the skin, and not only in a romantic relationship, but in friends.
What part of how have you established your value hierarchy, and is it something you've listed down now so that you know what values and because I think a lot of people ask me questions about a lot of stuff, and if a lot of people had their values listed out on what they actually truly want in all areas of their life, whether it's been money, relationships, business, I think a lot of people it would stop them doing certain deals, it would stop them dating certain people, it would stop certain things being attracted into their life. So how did you kind of establish getting your values out?
I think it's different for friends versus like romantic relationship, but as far as friends go, like male friendships, I look at, does this friend that I have that's a guy like actively try to help me win in some way, going out of their way to make a connection. Like, for example, yesterday I had a meeting with this guy who specializes in like data analysis, because that's an area of my business that I'm working on. And he helped me for like an hour and a half. And I just met him. But the reason he was open to doing that was because my other friend, who's like best friends with the data analyst, was like, you know, Arlin is one of my best friends. Please help him with his business, right? So he gets nothing out of this, you know? Like other than just being a good friend and providing value. So for my male friendships, I look at like, who are the guys in my life that seriously go out of their way to provide me value? And obviously I do the same in return. For my current relationship, my girlfriend, I think it is similar. Like, is she going out of her way to provide value? But it's also respect and loyalty. And I think you know where that comes from. but yeah, like if you have a girl that's hot that doesn't respect you and isn't loyal to you, there's nothing worse. You know? So yeah.
I think there's a lot of relationships in both ways in life. You know, women dating men that don't have enough respect for them, and it all comes down to if you find someone in your life that doesn't have respect for you, it's because you're not showing enough respect to yourself.
Absolutely.
Because I think everything's a mirror. Like, the world will mirror to you what you set yourself as. So if you set yourself as I don't respect myself and I let people treat me this way and this, that, and the other, and that's what you're setting up as, that's what you're going to get that all day long and twice on a Sunday. So how did you raise your consciousness enough then from that point to be able to see these patterns and see all this stuff that was happening in your external reality and kind of move through it? Like, what tools did you kind of put in place to make sure that happened?
During which time period? Like, coming out of the relationship, or?
Yeah, so you've just been through this relationship, and you know that this is not what I want. These are my values. But obviously, it's not just a case of going and listening to an audiobook. Mm-hmm. There must have been something that you've done in there, mm-hmm. some practices you've set up essentially, so that you can systemize and grow through this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Got it. Yeah, that's a great question. So. And I would target this for someone listening who feels like they struggle with really what it is like it's a people-pleasing paradigm where people pleasers are very concerned with their image and what everything looks like. And they're very concerned with how others view them. And they're very quick to do things to make people like them, which sounds like a good thing, right? But when you're just trying to make someone like you in order to look good to the outside world, that's different than fundamentally, as we were saying, is liking yourself, having enough respect for yourself, and out of that abundance of respect from yourself, like, a people pleaser is empty. They have no personal abundance unless someone gives them validation. They literally think there is something that, as a people pleaser, you have to realize and look yourself in the mirror and go, I don't think I'm enough as I am. That's why I keep trying to please people to make them like me so that I can feel good, so I can fill up my cup. Why was I obsessed with getting views with this girlfriend, this model girl? Because I didn't think I was good enough on my own. So
yes.
So as a people pleaser, you have to first look yourself in the mirror and work on that self-respect. And it's a lot of like recognizing your worth and recognizing your value. And this is something I still have to actively work on today. Like, I am an amazing person. Here's why. Listing out. So I still do a lot of like just personal reminders of all of the accomplishments I've made, of all the people I've positively affected. People pleasers make great educators and great course creators, right? Because they're super empathetic to what other people need, and they over deliver like, when people join my programs, you can imagine, as a people pleaser, like, I want people to be really fucking satisfied with the product, so I'd pack everything in it. But I have to constantly remind myself that already, as I am, it sounds corny, but like, I am enough. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the first part, is recognizing I am enough. Whether that takes journaling every morning, like 10 accomplishments I've made, 10 reasons I'm amazing, 10 reasons people should be excited to talk to me, even if they don't know anything about me. The next step to that is the practice of, and this might sound, again, very basic, but this is all like first principles, how to be as a human. And it's how to listen to your own emotions and your own desires. So for example, let's say you're a people pleaser, and you're out with a group of friends at dinner, and your friends want to go out to a club. Your immediate gut reaction is, oh, I don't want to go to a club. I'd rather go home and go to bed. But as a people pleaser, how does a people pleaser think? They go, well, I want my friends to like me. They want me to come to the club. They all want to go party and drink and go to the club. So therefore, if I want to still be relevant in this friend group, if I want them to still like me, I need to go with them. The reverse of it, and how you fix it as a people pleaser, and there's like some meditations that I was doing at the time. But what I would do is I would focus on myself, and I would say, okay, they want me to go. You have to actively ask yourself, what do I want? As a self-respecting person that validates myself, what do I want to do? I want to go home and go to bed. I'm going to go home and go to bed. It sounds so basic, but if you can imagine, like, as basic as it is, if you get that basic thing wrong over and over and over again, it just leads you to this completely screwed up reality where you're putting everyone else's desires above your own.
Well, what happens is, if you don't do what you actually truly want to do, and you continue to go on this path, like you say, of just pleasing other people, you lose confidence and lose self-belief in yourself of your own decisions. And then what starts happening then is, you'll find yourself in life you'll find a decision in life, and something will come up, and it'll be, whether it be like a decision for you to start a new business, or you to have a relationship with a girl, or whatever it will be, and you'll start asking for other people's opinions on whether you should do that, and whether that's how you should do it. And a lot of times in life, you don't truly need to ask anyone's opinion on what you should do or how you should move. Or there's a lot of people that ask me questions in the DMs, and I'm sure there is you that ask you questions where I'm like, you don't need to ask me that. Like, if you sat there with yourself for 10 minutes in silence and listened to your gut, you've got the answer within you. You don't need anyone else's. And by you asking me that, and continue to ask other people externally these questions, you kind of you stop your own self-growth, you stop your own self-worth, and you don't allow it to build. That's kind of what I've found through my personal journey, that's kind of happened in a lot of other people's lives. They're stopping their own growth. So how do you think that people can break the pattern of doing that?
Yeah, so I think the most helpful thing is to know that it's a spectrum. And on one end, you have a people pleaser. And the people pleaser, as we were just explaining, bases all their decisions on what others think, and what would make other people like them, and what would make others feel good. And they ignore themselves, and they have no respect for themselves. The other end of the spectrum is the narcissist. The narcissist is the complete opposite. They don't give a fuck about how you feel, how this person feels. If I cheat on this person, they're narcissistic, sociopathic, and they have no connection to how other people feel at all. All they care about is what they want. And there's actually pros to that, right? As we're saying, like, the people pleaser needs to be more like the narcissist, and the narcissist needs to be more like the people pleaser. So how do you actionably do that, there's a very simple meditation. And this meditation, if practiced daily, puts you in balance in between those two spectrums. Because the truth is, as we're saying, as you were explaining, like, yes, sometimes you need to listen to your gut, but you also should sometimes listen to feedback from other people, right? There's a balance.
There's a balance, yeah.
And the meditation is you sit there. I like to light an incense stick, and the incense stick takes about 30, 45 minutes to go from all the way, down to the end. And I breathe in. So you inhale, you focus on yourself. How do you feel? What are your desires? What do you need? Self-respect. And then on the exhale, you relax and you focus on like the more connection to others around you. You think about others. On the inhale, you breathe in, you focus on your body, you focus on how you feel, you focus on the single point of focus of the incense stick. On the exhale, you notice your peripheral surroundings. You think, how does this person feel? How do my neighbors feel? And you just keep going back and forth. And that pattern of going, what do I need? What do they need? What do I need? What do they need? That becomes just how you treat everything.
The flow of life.
Flow of life, exactly. And then you can it's like a muscle, It's like, imagine if you only did, pull-ups your entire life, and then someone handed you some dumbbells to do shoulder press. You're like, wait, I'm used to pulling down. I didn't know that I could even push up, right? So it's exercising both of those and getting familiar with that.
Yeah, and I think that if you do as you say, and you get present with it and understand that, obviously something you've done well in your life is build your network, right? And it's like when you come to building a network the same way that I've built my network, just like you, we've had to give in order to get. And it's no different with what you're saying about this meditation. And when you do that, you have to practice giving before you can get. So with that meditation, as you just said, it's like you're answering both parts, so it puts you centered.
Yes. You cut out for a second, but you said you answer both parts, so you're centered.
Yeah, and,
right.
And then you're centered and
yes.
stuff like that. I want to go into obviously how you set your goals, because I was watching a video, and it's amazing. You had your kitchen all set up, and you had all white cupboards along the wall, and you basically broke it down into your 3 monthly, 6 monthly, yearly goals. And I think it might have even included weekly goals. And I just wanted to understand, there was a certain framework and a way that you did it that interested me. And I want you to break down that framework and how you set and achieve goals, because I think that's something that the audience would really get something actionable out of.
Yeah. So I've definitely been inspired by and taken notes from, some of the greats of like the goal setting space. Tony Robbins, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And I've been very obsessed with goal setting because, going back to like the time in my life where I couldn't control my thoughts, that led me to learn about, if you focus on goals as your thoughts, then those thoughts become things, right? So I've experimented with lots of different ways to program my mind and to organize these thoughts in my brain to achieve what I think is the most effective way to think about these things, to think about your goals. And so I think like a standard in goal setting practices is to begin with the end in mind, right? The beginner mistake is to think, okay, what am I going to achieve this year? And then once I achieve that, I'll think about the next year or something. But I always try to think, all right, if I have 100 years or so, what do I want to look back and say that I did with my entire life? And you look at all the most high achieving men in the world. You look at Jeff Bezos, like he didn't have a 1-year vision for Amazon. He had a 100-year vision or more. He was thinking at least 25 years into the future when he was building the infrastructure for Amazon. You look at Elon Musk. Elon Musk does not have a 1-year plan for SpaceX. Like he wants to maybe colonize Mars in the next, I don't know how many years. Let's just call it 20, 30 years. So I try to do the same thing, and I think everyone should aspire to do the same thing. You know, you're only the size of the goals you set. And if you set goals in terms of hundreds of years, even if they're somewhat vague, you're going to put yourself on a grander mission and a grander trajectory. So I always try to think, all right, I'm 150. I look back, what have I done? That's like step one. And then you just break it back. Okay, I'm 75. What have I done? Okay, 45. What have I done? And you keep breaking it back to your 10 5-year goals, 1-year goals, and now 3-month, 1 month. So what you're referring to is yeah, I had a studio apartment. That was the apartment that I moved into after that breakup with the girl, and I was in a super monk mode phase because I had to rebuild everything. You know, I'd stopped making money for like 8 months because I was just super down in that relationship. So I wrote out basically my mission on one of the cabinets, my life mission. And then next to that one, I wrote out my 1-year goal, what I want to accomplish in a year. And then next to that, I had like a 3-month sprint, like 90-day sprint on that cabinet. And the next cabinet was a 1 month, 30 days, 1 week, and then the next day. And I just really liked to see them laid out like that because it puts everything you're doing day to day in context and consistently reminds you of what you're actually doing. You know, like if I just woke up today and I was like, all right, I'm doing a podcast, but I don't know what I'm doing next month. You know, it's a little less motivating than thinking, this podcast that I'm doing with Frankie is contributing to this 100-year mission. You know, it's so cool. It's motivating to think about it like that.
Gives you perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And now I'm not claiming that I know exactly what I'm going to do across the next 100 years, but I think having a loose definition at least is worth. Most people fail to realize that they can author their reality. Most people, there's a pen, like there's like God, and he sits you down and he's like, every day you have this opportunity with God to sit down and pick up a pen and write what you want to do with your life. And 90% of people just don't even pick up the pen. They just go, "What's up, God? All right, I'm going to go to work." And that's it, you know? And they just let the news program them. They let social media, TikTok, Reels program them. And they don't even know where their ideas and their goals came from. You know, they might have been walking down the street. Let's say, you know, someone commutes to work. They walk down, let's say they live in New York City, they live in London, and they're commuting down the street every day to work. And there's some signs about like some new Netflix show. And they don't even realize it, but they're seeing signs for this new Netflix show. And then like a couple weeks later, they're talking to their friends about their goals and like, oh, you know, I think I want to like do something with like something like Netflix or something. Like they don't even know, they're so influenced by their environment, they don't know where the ideas that they even have come from. So what I try to do, and what I recommend is first go away from object referral, from referring to your outside to set these goals in the first place, and develop a connection to presence, to the higher power, to God, and do your best to let the goals come to you for that grander 100-year mission. Let those goals come to you from your gut, from within. And when you have, so there's object referral. That's doing goals based off what your environment is doing, what your friends are doing, what your peers are doing, what the other social media people are doing, versus doing self-referral and setting goals based off your own gut intuition and what you almost get like a divine inspiration of what you need to do. And when you
So in order to get more creative then, Arlin, what you're saying is you've essentially got to strip back all these dopamine hits that you're getting from your external environment, whether that be from things, i.e. like, you know, buying stuff and stuff that you think you want because you've seen someone else have it, and cutting down, say you follow 500 people and you've got 500 people influencing every week on Instagram, Twitter and everywhere else showing you their lives and showing you what they want, you're saying that subconsciously you're picking that up and you're running with it as if it's what you want, but really that's not what your gut's telling you.
Yeah, I think a way to hopefully give people an aha moment is like, what's a more powerful source of, what is a more powerful source of power? Is it the Netflix movie you just watched? Is it the TikTok you just watched, the thing that's already created by a human? Or is it the invisible creative source energy that created literally everything that's ever existed? that again is invisible, and that you can only communicate with if you get super, super quiet with yourself.
It's powerful. You just said that. It's powerful. It's going to hit a lot of people right between the eyeballs, because I see what you're saying, because it's only when I've got fully present and quiet with myself that the best things have dropped in. And it's only through like meditations, through breath works, through mushroom journeys that all the creativity has come through me. I'm meant to birth that. I'm meant to do this. I'm meant to let that go. I'm meant to that's a shadow that needs answering. Like, everything comes through in those moments. You don't learn anything when you're in this busy state of just going after it. You don't learn nothing in that state.
I mean, you can learn things from that state, but the thing that you learn is typically because you failed super hard. You know, like, you're so consumed with the outside world that universal power or that universal source just slaps you across the face and is like, you need to be humbled. You need to remember again the true source of all this power, which, as you were saying, is coming to you through the gut, through your intuition.
And I think the world will keep serving you the same lessons unless you're willing to learn the learnings that you're meant to take away from it the first time. And the slaps will keep getting harder and harder and harder until you sat there and you're like, okay, now I understand why this keeps coming up. You need to see these. You need to see things, right plain as day in front of you sometimes, to be able to go, okay, I understand why that's something. So you mentioned monk mode. Obviously, monk mode's something that a lot of YouTubers like yourself have talked about. Is monk mode for you where you strip away all your dopamine so you can kind of build up your routine within that?
I've gone through phases of more intensive monk mode, where I did do something like that. You know, maybe I kicked it off with like a 3-day, almost like Vipassana meditation, where I don't speak to anyone, I don't engage in any social media or any activity at all for a few days, and then I go into like, the more intensive, put your phone in the drawer, delete Instagram. Like, I've done that. Nowadays, I'm more so focused on like, and the way I look at it is more so because when I think about that, I think about like, yes, you're eliminating distraction, but it also feels like you're trying to discipline yourself. And nowadays, I more so prefer to, like, rather than discipline myself to do things I don't want to do that I know are good for me, I just reprogram myself to enjoy doing the hard things. So I used to hate working out. I used to hate going to the gym. But then I learned about reprogramming yourself, and now I reprogrammed myself to love going to the gym. It's one of my favorite things to do. And not even going to the gym and working out, but like a workout that truly destroys me, that truly makes me want to quit. And it's like a highlight of my day when I work out. Same with like anything related to my work. If anything comes up that's like a new system that I have to build, or a new project that needs to be created that I feel initial resistance towards, instead of using discipline and monk mode, I just start programming myself to see all of the benefits of doing that thing, to the point where I don't really need discipline because I want to do it anyway.
So what are your steps to reprogramming yourself? Are you reprogramming your conscious or your subconscious?
It's using your conscious mind to reprogram your subconscious mind. And it's pretty simple. I mean, talk about like Presence and Eckhart Tolle. Everything that's happening in life is neutral, right? Like this podcast is neither positive nor negative. It's just, we're here in the present moment. This is all just a thing that is. And the human mind, consciously or unconsciously, but we have the opportunity in front of us now to consciously decide whether there are more benefits to doing this podcast or drawbacks. If we really I think both of us are in agreement that this is a benefit, right? There's benefits for both of us
there's
here.
There's a net positive, yeah.
But if we wanted to, we could spend a few minutes and come up with a list of negatives of why we shouldn't be doing this. And you can do that with anything. So the only reason you feel let's just take working out's easy example to use. The only reason that people don't like working out is because they associate more negative outcomes and more negativity in general to working out than positive ones. When working out is just neutral. So people who don't like to work out, it's painful, it's hard, I'm sore afterwards. I feel a little bit embarrassed when I go to the gym because I'm not in as good shape as other people. I don't like sweating. I got to clean my clothes and do my laundry after. I smell afterwards, right? Like these are all reasons maybe someone might not like working out. But what if you just stacked on 150 reasons why working out is the best thing in the world, and why sweating is actually a good thing, and why smelling bad is actually cool, somehow, right?
So you're just saying you're restacking the value structure of you can restack because you're saying everything is neutral, and you can just restack the value ladder to have more positives than the negatives that you currently presume this thing to have, and then that's how you internally motivate yourself to go and do the thing that you found hard in the interim.
Yeah, and that's the secret to life. Like we all know what we should be doing. We all know the things that are good for us that we simply aren't doing. And the secret to life is taking the things that you don't want to do that you know are good for you and transforming them into experiences that you want to do that are good for you. That is the full secret to life.
And in a way, what you're saying is actually a really big spiritual connected transformation in itself, because you're transforming your conscious, your subconscious, and your physical reality in what you're doing, all through the modality of restacking the values on this thing that you know you should be doing anyway, and just saying, look, I hate it because of this and this reason, but if all the positive reasons that I stack on this side just far now outweigh this negative, so now I can go and action it in my daily life.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, it's alchemy. That's what alchemy is, and that's what the crucifixion is about. Like that's why that's what Jesus dying on the cross is about. It's about transforming, killing the old version of yourself and consciously creating a new enlightened version of yourself. That's what all of life is about.
That is a really powerful way of putting it, in terms of the way that you say about killing your old self and rebirthing a new one, and that powerful transformation of self, and how that comes out. But one of the things I wanted to get into with you, obviously you've made a lot of money online and transformed your whole life through online revenue streams, and it's something that you've had to start somewhere. I presume, was your first online revenue started with a YouTube channel, or how did you kind of get into the online space?
Yeah, so it started on YouTube about 8 years ago, seven or 8 years ago. And yeah, 7 or 8 years ago. And I posted videos almost every day for 6 or 7 months. My first revenue stream was a merch company. So I would sell t-shirts and hoodies branded as like my merch. And that evolved into that just evolved into like a larger and larger operation as time went on. I was very into Tim Ferriss, 4-hour work week, automating every part of the business, making a very lean operation, high profit margin. And yeah, I had the clothing brand to a point I was doing several $100,000 a year with no employees, with just me. And then that transitioned into several other opportunities. But that was my first stream.
And I suppose once you started to earn the money online, you started to see that there's this whole new world out there that people have access to, that until you kind of see it and until you kind of experienced it, you can't really. Sometimes you can think it's a bit out of reach. Like, there's a lot of people at the moment that want to go into e-commerce and do all this stuff, but if you were going to start an online revenue stream from scratch today, like what kind of revenue stream would you go for?
I would follow the same principles that I did when I was starting then. I love this topic because the make money online landscape is much different today than it was 8 years ago. And we alluded to this a little bit. You know, there were the main guys. There was Tony Robbins. For internet marketing, it was Ty Lopez, you know, Russell Brunson and .com Secrets, ClickFunnels. Alex Becker had a YouTube channel, you know. But if you wanted to learn how to do something back in the day, how to start it, I tried all this stuff. I tried social media management agency. I tried Shopify store. I tried starting a course. But, you know, Sam Ovens didn't exist until 2020 or 2018, 2019. Iman existed, but he wasn't as big as he is now. There was no agency navigator that you could sign up for. There was no, you know, crypto boom. I mean, there was, but it wasn't as popular. People didn't know about these things. If you wanted to learn how to make money online through Shopify or any of these other methods, it was basically you just buy one of Ty Lopez's course. He owned the whole market. But none of that stuff worked for me. And what I did was I leaned on my skill sets that I had baked into me from when I was a little kid, and that was a skill of telling stories on the internet and making YouTube videos. And if I were to do that now, you know, now is again a very different landscape than it was back then. Back then, you know, an American 18-year-old guy in an American university with a YouTube channel documenting what he was doing is super unique. Nowadays, you can look up any college in America and find like 3 or 4 YouTubers to show you what that college is like. And so I would look for, if I were starting today, I would look at what are my existing skills? Where do I have an advantage over everyone else? And I would look for what new opportunity isn't being exploited quite yet. I do think that there's a lot of potential for people to succeed in when, you know, they join start a social media marketing agency or a Shopify store. If you really work at it, you're going to get successful. But me personally, I would prefer to lean on my unique strengths and try my best to find an opportunity that hasn't been exploited quite yet. And that's what I saw back then. I was like, I saw there was one YouTuber, a guy in California, actually going to the school in California, USC, and he was blowing up on YouTube because he was showing this college life, you know, that no one had ever really seen before. It was like a real life insight into fraternities and, you know, a 18, 19, 20-year-old guy who's in college. And I saw there was one guy doing it on the West Coast. I went to school on the East Coast in Boston, and I was like, no one's doing this. So I would look for what are my skills? What new opportunity can I exploit with those skills that's like a blue ocean? And so I honestly, Frankie, I would probably have to go and brainstorm what that opportunity would be. And it would take me a while. You know, this is a mode of thinking that I think is probably one of the most useful mental models for anyone to have for this type of answering this type of question, is understanding that the best ideas are typically not the first ideas that you have, right? So if you ask me the question, you know, if you were to start today, what would you do to make money online? Well, my first thought is going to be what? It's going to be the opportunity that I've heard the most about. That's what 99% of people's first thought is, because it's the thing they've heard the most about. Crypto, Shopify, SMMA, influencer. Those ideas are the worst ideas, in my opinion. The best idea is going to be the obscure one that hits you in the middle of the night or during a meditation or during working out. That's like, wait a second. What if I did that? Right? Like, I know it's a completely different world, but if we go back to 2015, 16, when I was starting my YouTube channel, the idea of walking around a college campus with a video camera like this,
yeah,
and talking to this camera in Boston, Massachusetts, I was the only person in the entire city of millions of people doing that. And so when I put it on the internet, people were like, holy shit, I've never seen anything like this. So that I couldn't possibly tell you what I would actually do. You would need to give me like a day or so, and I would really have to come up with something completely unexploited. And by the way, if you think about the most successful people today, I bring up Andrew Tate, although he's in jail right now. Did he come up with that short form affiliate marketing podcast strategy by taking a course? No.
Yeah.
He invented it.
Yeah.
It was no one has ever seen an affiliate marketing strategy with 30,000 affiliates promoting the same $50 a month offer and having he took his unique skills of talking, his unique assets. He had these thousands of hours of interviews, and then he created this army. No one has ever seen that before. So the people that really break through, in my opinion, and have the highest level of successes do things that no one has done, not that no one has done before, but yeah, I mean, they do things no one's,
differently.
They invent.
I think in essence is what you're saying, and I think that's really good advice that you've given there, because if you do what everyone else is doing, you get what everyone else is getting.
Exactly.
Which is mediocre results, and mediocre results aren't exactly what you're particularly looking for or you're aspiring to have. So you've got the opportunity when you go inward, like has been the through thought of this podcast has been about looking inward, because if you look inward, all these answers are within. Because when you get quiet, like we said before, you can see these opportunities, but you can't see them when you're in a noisy environment. And a lot of you that are listening to this are surrounded by a lot of noise, that if you take yourself away from it, even some of the successful brand owners that are listening to this podcast right now in the car on the way to their office, right? A lot of them will be, because they're now doing 50 million a year, their environment's got so noisy that they've come away from the way that they could move at the start, which made them unique in the first place, which is now harming the brand, because the brand isn't growing at the same trajectory, because you're not doing what originally made it successful. So maybe you should go back to that. Does that make sense? Like, I think a lot of people are experiencing that in life.
Absolutely. And I think and feel your podcast is a perfect example of this, because, even like podcasting has become more and more popular, but it's very clear to me when I do these podcasts who had the internal urge, the gut feeling, the gut instinct that I, Frankie Lee, need to do this podcast. And the guys who are like, oh, well, Frankie Lee's got a podcast. Seems like a lot of guys have podcasts now. I should start a podcast because they're all doing it. It's obvious who's meant to be doing this, and it shines through in every part of your being when you're doing the thing that you're called to do, rather than what everyone else is doing and trying to base your decision off that.
I love the fact you said that, because Arlin, right? I love the podcast and everything I'm trying to bring to the world. I'm trying to bring people on like yourself to get people to really. I don't do a podcast just for them to listen to. I want them to feel every part of it, and I want them to understand that it's from the feeling that you can elevate. You can't elevate just by listening to something. You've got to feel it as well. So that's why I don't try and do the typical podcast thing where it's just like, there's no feeling in it. And the beautiful thing about doing the inside work is that you start to know what feels right to you, and it's not going to be the same for your mate down the road. So you have to separate yourself from everything that you know in your reality right now in order to understand if that is even the reality that you want to live, and take yourself completely out of it. And because obviously that's something you did. I mean, when those people were taken out of your life, that was to give you an opportunity to be alone so that you could get closer to self and then know who you are, so you can actually enjoy the reality that you live in, not live in this false reality, which is where you're chasing likes, where you're chasing dopamine, where you were chasing views, where you're chasing validation, all these things that your external reality at the time was telling you chase that, because that's what was bringing you external success. But internally, you fucking felt empty, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you were gonna say that there's the one key thing then that kind of really allowed you to transform and funnel that into getting through all of that, what would it actually truly be if you actually broke it down?
In terms of getting through the more difficult times, or getting
just in terms of like getting closer to understanding self, right? Really truly understanding self.
I think it's understanding that it's like a never-ending, relentless mission. And it's like, it is like the mission. At least that's how I view it daily, like I wake up every day simultaneously very excited and confident to build what I'm building, and at the same time completely questioning what I'm doing, as if there's like a potential that all of this is not the right path. Like and if there's any hints in my emotions, in my drive, in synchronicities, right, that
you'll pivot,
that this is not the right path, I need to pivot, and I need to accept that. Like just as an example, we had some technical difficulties last week, and we had to postpone to this week. Let's say that happened every time I did a podcast. Like basically, like everyone had to keep canceling and pushing back, like every time. That could be a little bit of a hint from the universe, like, hey, this isn't what you should be doing, right? So it's being excited for what you're building while simultaneously questioning, is there another path that I should be pursuing?
That is 100% what I wanted you to kind of allude to, is the fact that even though you've done the internal work and you think this is your path, you're constantly evaluating the road that you're taking to make sure that you're on the right road. Is kind of what you've alluded to there, and I think that's so right, mate, because you've been doing something now, especially like YouTube and stuff, for so long. You could. Are you doing the raw milk? He's doing the raw milk. You've been doing YouTube now for so long that it could just have become a habit that you continue to do, where it's actually might not be what you truly want to do.
This is a great topic. I'll mix in. Yeah, I just took a swig of my raw milk, like, because I really try to. It's a relentless mission, right? Why am I drinking raw milk? Well, because I hypothesize that eating and drinking the purest food will get me more pure and more connected to the universal source, that ultimate mission that I should be doing. And to your point about, I've been doing YouTube a long time, right? And I'm actually right now I'm sitting with my my filmer and assistant editor, and we're talking a lot about my YouTube channel and my strategy, because we know that there's so many different paths I could be following on YouTube. I could like try to max out the algorithm, right? Like I could make these videos that are like how to, videos that everyone would click on, how to become 92% more attractive to women using social media, or these and with the green background thumbnail, like that, right?
Yeah.
Or, and this is, I think where we're really moving toward is like, I could just continue to make the videos that I felt internally driven to create. From when I first started, I didn't care about the algorithm when I first started. I just made videos because I felt like I had to make these videos. And guess what? Those videos don't, at least right now and recently, haven't been doing as well. Like they're getting some of the worst views I've ever had. But I'm so happy that I'm making them, and I'm happy that like every time, like even the viewers that are seeing them, even though my channel's not growing at a rapid pace right now, it's like we're talking about, it's very interesting. This podcast is like we keep coming back to the same thing. It's like we need to find the balance of for example, making the videos because I feel internally motivated to make them, but also considering the audience and what they want to see too. Like it is a balance,
Yeah.
Because on one hand, you could compare it to like a narcissist. Like if you only make videos that you want to make and you don't care about the algorithm at all, well then you're not caring about the viewer in any way, shape, or form. But if you just completely succumb to the algorithm and you don't care about yourself, then you're starving yourself of what drives you in the first place. So yeah, I like that topic because that's something my assistant editor and filmer and I are talking about all the time. Is like
there's a happy medium there, isn't there? Because at the end of the day, what I've discovered with my podcast has smashed it on Apple and Spotify organically, right? And I think that's because people feel the content and they share the content and stuff like that, and they resonate with it. And hopefully I'm putting out good content so people like it, right? But on YouTube, it's been a real slow growth process, and many other people and podcasters and other people have said to me, Frankie, if you just cut this video into 10-minute clips and you just do timestamps and you just do this and that, your channel would grow a lot faster and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. You are right, and I'm not disputing that you're right. But on the other side of the coin, that doesn't light me up. Like, to be honest, that doesn't light me up. And yeah, I would like to grow faster on these platforms, obviously, but it's just a whole load of work that I don't want to do or enjoy at this moment in time. So you kind of, and because I did question whether that was like a limiting thing in my mind of this, that, and the other. I started to question that internally and all that stuff, and I meditated into it, and I was like, nah, I just like putting out the full podcast on there and not drop, like, they're like, why don't you release half the podcast and half the podcast, and that's going to be better for the algorithm. But to me, it's just like, nah, just give them it, and whoever's meant to watch that video and finds it, and whoever isn't meant to find it doesn't find it. But I said to myself when I started this podcast, and I'm sure you said this when you started your YouTube channel, I said to myself, this is what I really internally want to do. I'll stick at this for 10 years. So I'll just play the long game, because that's the only game that I know that with everything that I've done that's been both successful and fulfilling has been when I've played the long game with these things. Is that kind of something you resonate with?
Absolutely. That's really good. Yeah, it's like whatever these things are for you. For me, it's like the corny thumbnails and the corny topics. For you, maybe it's like putting in the timestamps and doing the 10-minute clips. Like, if those things are in any way draining the light that you're able to bring to these conversations, which long term is the light that matters the most, then yeah, don't do it.
Well, this is the thing, right? And something you'd have definitely experienced. I only want to have conversations with people that I genuinely want to have conversations with. So therefore, I invite every guest on personally. You know what I mean? Like I reached out to you, like I reached out to everyone else. That everyone's an invite only guest. I don't let other people invite themselves on my podcast because if they invite themselves on here, that is the wrong energy exchange because they're coming to serve themselves.
Yeah, but Frankie,
right?
think about how much you could grow if you could have this guy and this guy and this.
Yeah, 100%. And I've been through it because I've had people, you know, I've had recently. There's been quite a few different women that have reached out that want to come on the podcast with millions of followers. But it's like where I am in my life at the moment, I can't just go having someone on just because they sold shitloads because they're doing 3 million a month on OnlyFans. It just doesn't sit with me in my soul, right? So I can't just facilitate that conversation just for clicks. You know, I just can't. That's where I am internally, and I think what I want you lot to get there listening to this is the fact of like never ever if you're doing something that lights you up, whether you've got a clothing brand in e-commerce, whether you've got a YouTube channel like Arlin's got, or you're doing something that whatever you're doing that lights you up, never ever sell it out just for the that would do 10,000 fucking views, or that would do. I've never done that, and that is something I'll never do because even though you get these quick growth moments, like you get these quick dopamine hits for views and stuff. You'd have to sit back and you'd look back at your podcast or you look back at your YouTube channel and you'd be like, right, that doesn't align at all with who I am, and that's something that worries me.
Frankie, have you ever deviated from that? Maybe not with this maybe with this podcast, or maybe with anything else in your life where you feel like you went against that?
Yeah, 100%. I was a professional boxing trainer who worked at world title level, and that whole pursuit of me being a professional boxing trainer was to prove people wrong about me for no reason. Do you know what I mean? Like that whole journey was a dick swinging competition so that I could say that I was a professional boxing trainer, because I attached my self-worth to me being a professional boxing trainer, the same way as other people attach I'll give you an example. I've got girl mates in Australia that are still to this day taking pictures of themselves in bikinis every day and putting it on Instagram because the algorithm favors their photos when they're in a bikini photo on Instagram, right? And they're getting loads of dopamine, loads of likes, but really then they want to be a more wholesome girl talking about breath work or talking about something that they're doing in their real life. But they can't. But they're too scared to step out of that shadow and step into their true light of who they actually fucking are. And I think the sooner, Arlin, that most people realize that concept, that you can be a long time going up the wrong ladder in your life, and you always have the ultimate choice on whether you continue to take the next rung and the next rung. And the radical honesty comes into that.
Yeah, I love this theme that you're talking about. That is the theme of your podcast, is like going within and doing what lights you up. And I think that becomes even more relevant and more important. And this podcast thus becomes more important as AI gets better and better, because AI is getting very good at. AI is going to get very good at algorithm. Right? At doing the thing that generates X result, but it's not going to be able to replicate insert thing that lights a human up. Right? So right, this podcast, like it's very important. So I love this. This is great.
I think AI can't create feeling, whereas a brand can create feeling. Like you create a clothing brand, it can create a feeling. You think of Gymshark, you get a certain feeling. You think of Represent Clo, you get a feeling. You think of certain creators like Iman Gadzi, there's a feeling to it. You think about your content, there's a your audience get a feeling to that. When you're putting in purpose into something, it's how you make other people feel that creates your brand and your authenticity.
Yeah, that's really good. And let's say, because I know I asked you the question, have you ever gone against it? I've gone against it on my YouTube, and I look at some of the videos that I've made where I only made them for clicks and for people to find out about, whatever product I was selling at the time. And I look at it and I'm just like, man, like the feeling that you're describing is completely disrupted when someone sees that. It's like, it's like this energy. The feeling goes from like this. I would like to think that the energy of my brand, or I would like to portray the energy of my brand as this like excitement, adventurous energy of building something amazing, traveling the world, and experiencing new culture and learning and achieving some level of enlightenment. And when I come in and I say things or I make videos that are like for the algorithm, the energy turns into just this like weird little creature that's just like, give me your attention. Like, give me some views, right? Like it's creepy.
Yeah. And also everyone that you attract to your brand, to your channel, to yourself, when you do these things, those people aren't congruent with who you are anyway. So they're not who you want to have around. So they're not who you want to have around you as a human. They're not who you want buying or wearing your clothes for your brand, because they're not congruent with your brand vision from the start. So by you doing these things and having these short-term things where you go and create this product because this other brand's creating this product, so you think, I'll sell this similar type of hoodie, for argument's sake, for my econ brand because this other brand's winning with it, or I'll take this other style of clothing because they're winning with it. But what you do is you now attract to your brand people that don't represent your archetype of client, and then you end up getting smacked down the line because you got people wearing your clothes and wearing your that don't represent your ethos, and then the people who you do want to wear your clothes won't want to wear your clothes because these other people that are non-conscious and don't resonate with the brand are wearing them. So it's you kind of you start spinning for algorithms, you start spinning for acceptance and all these other topics that we're talking about. You start spinning stuff for that. You start putting yourself in a whole world of pain down the track, and that might happen in day one or one day from then, or it might happen 3 months from then. But eventually, at some point, it's going to harm you, not only on a brand level, but it harms you on spiritual, emotional, and a money level ultimately as well. To me, I don't want it to be a podcast where anyone could just walk on here.
Yeah.
Because I want to control the narrative, because it's important that the people and the listeners get value from the people that I see them getting value in. It's very important to me that this is a value play. You know what I'm saying? That it's heavily stacked. Like, I'll eventually ask for 1% in terms of like I'll ask them for a share or something on social media, but like 99% of the time I'm giving you something, a tool that you can just take, put into your life, and it's going to change it, and it's going to give you a positive feeling. So I just want you to keep getting that. It's not about just having someone who's got 15 million followers on just because they've got 15 million followers. I couldn't give a fuck. I know lots of successful people, many that I've many that I am going to invite on this podcast, and many that I haven't invited on because the value exchange is wrong. Like, it's all about selling something or pushing a narrative that's not congruent with growth of a human being. Do you know what I mean? And you've got to know how you're going to set your stall out and be non-negotiable on that. Once you've done that internal work that we're talking about, once you've done that meditation, once you've looked inwards, once you kind of have an idea of who you are and what resonates and what doesn't resonate, it's not about being stubborn. It's about having a set of moral compasses that you work to, that you stay within, and I operate entirely within that framework. And I think you need a framework. And what you've said throughout this podcast are little pieces that people can take and put into their framework. I can't give someone a framework, and neither can you. That's going to be completely tailored for every human. But you can just put in them little one. You can just take. I take this from Arlin. He's having great success with that. I resonate with that. Put that in. Then I take that from Frankie. I take that from Tim Ferriss. Take that from Joe Rogan. It's like, just that has to be your creation. I think that, and then you start to really start to get it, and then it creates that feeling, I suppose. But obviously, all this is well and good, Arlin, but people have to be able to monetize it, and this is something that I never really considered when I started the podcast. Is like that you've eventually got to monetize somehow. How did you find a way to ethically monetize what you did, and how can the people listening to this ethically monetize once they've found out their values and everything, and set up all these processes like you've talked about?
Yeah, how did I do it first? Like I said, the first thing I did was the clothing brand, and part of the reason I did that was actually because, my mom's a painter, my dad's a photographer. I grew up with like Photoshop and design and not necessarily fashion, but I really liked the idea of like making a design and people wearing that design. And so again, I took something that was kind of core within me and turned it into a business, turned it into a brand. And that was the first mission. The second one was Maxi. And Maxi was all related to what we were discussing beginning of this podcast with mental health, mental reprogramming, the whiteboards, right? Maxi is the whiteboard, that whiteboard breakdown mixed in with daily and weekly and monthly planning of your goals and of the things that you need to do, mixed in with also the 80-20 principle, which is something I'm obsessed with, and mixed in with mental reprogramming and using an audio recording of your goals, listening to that recording, and basically programming your brain to focus on those goals. And so, again, Maxi was something that wasn't at all, something that was just a money grab, right? It was, I wish I had it when I was 15 years old. And so is it this, and Maxi is your software, isn't it? Yeah. Yes. It's a software. I think it's like $47. It's like entry level $47, isn't it? And it's meant to help people access the tools, the mindset tools, and the programming to allow them to fulfill and guide them through the journey of self-development, so to speak. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is a tool, a mental reprogramming tool that helps people get clear on what they want in their life and then create actionable, effective plans to get there. For like we said before, first, most people don't even decide what they want in their life. So Maxi immediately helps you get clear on what you want in your life across your 100 years or so. And then it uses the 80-20 principle to help people actually make effective plans to get there. So we spoke about this a little bit before as well, where the first idea you have is the idea that everyone has. That's the average thing. So if you can set big goals, but if then you think like everyone else, it's going to take you a lot longer to get there. So Maxi also helps you in planning those goals think differently than most people in order to achieve those goals, so you're able to get there a lot faster. What are some of the questions that the audience could ask themselves so that they can implement the 80-20 rules? So say that they think they want to do this, and this. What are some of the key questions that you would then ask to that answer to make sure that it aligns and it goes on the journey? I'll give you two. So the first one is, if you had a heart attack and you could now only work 2 hours a week on your business, on that goal in your business, what would you do if you only had 2 hours a week? And that's going to tell you the most high impact things, because the thing with the 80-20 rule, right, is that there's a few things that if you do those few things produce most of the results anyway. Like in the gym, there's a few exercises that if you do those few exercises, they'll make you a lot stronger and a lot bigger than, just curls or, whatever other exercises. So it's about finding the most effective actions. The second question is, what is asking yourself when you're thinking about whatever goal you want to achieve is, what would be the easiest and what would be the easiest and most fun route for me to take? The easiest, fastest, and most fun route. And because often people's actually default mode of thinking is like, this is going to be really hard and take a really long time. Whereas in reality, a lot of times the 80-20 path is actually the easiest, most fun, and most effective. So yeah, using those two questions together, it's like thinking opposite of how most people think, and that usually finds you those actions that if you follow those actions, they produce results that most people don't experience.
Yeah, I like it because then you're getting more in depth on breaking down and stripping out all the crap, because that's in essence what we've got to do as humans is kind of brain dump everything that's our goal and our vision and what we want to do. You could write at the top of the page like 50 ways that I can make income, and you could just dump 50 ways on a page. The first 10 would be easy, the second 10 would be a bit harder, but getting 50 ways that you can make income potentially for a lot of people would be hard, right? But then when you've got 50 ways on a piece of paper, you can clearly kind of say, well, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that. And then you can kind of pick a few. And then from the 80-20 principle, like you say, you can kind of really get to the point where you've got a couple of applicable ways that you can do it that actually resonates with you and actually doesn't have to be that hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you make that list of 50, there's bound to be like 2 to 5 ideas out of that 50 that are significantly better than the rest. And also they're probably ideas that weren't your first couple ideas. It's probably like down the list, like 30 or 40, number 30 or 40, because it took you a while to actually come up with it.
When you created this software, is this software like, do you take people through a simple process because I find that when you take people through like a real complicated process when it comes to like finding out who they are, setting goals and all this kind of stuff, like this is where people get really overwhelmed and then can't action anything.
No, yeah, it's super simple. It's super simple. So basically the time commitment for Maxi is when you first purchase it, right? And that's when people are most motivated, when the day they buy the thing. I tell them to set aside 2 to 4 hours, and that's to plan out, to run through the prompts and questions and videos to plan out their life. Then on a daily basis, it's about 10 minutes at the end of the day. And that's just reviewing your day, thinking about your goals in your goals for your life in general, and then making plans and goals for the next day in alignment with those. And then I actually don't even use Maxi daily anymore. I use it weekly. So I like at the end of every week, one of those main questions that I keep going to in Maxi is like, if I only had 2 hours this week to work on my business, what would be the one project I would accomplish?
Yeah. And that question allows you to get real granular of what you want out of that specific week for yourself.
Yeah. If people are honest with themselves, what they really need to do in their business comes down to like a few key actionable items each week. And each of those actionable items are typically not much more than like a few hours to do each. Of course, I'm not saying like I don't work hard. Like I work all the time. I work from the moment my head's off the pillow. But as far as like the things that, that's because I enjoy the game too. But as far as the things that like really push the needle forward, it's usually like there's one thing that's way more important than everything else. And I look for that every week, and that's what Maxi urges people to do as well.
From your work that you've done on advisory when it comes to like marketing brands and stuff like that, like Hoobe and stuff like that, when you've gone into brands like that, and have you done the 80-20 principle rule on what they're doing as a brand and kind of stripped back a lot of the stuff that they thought that was productive but wasn't?
Yeah. So the advising that I've done in Hoobe, there's a couple different layers to it. The first, I think, most impactful, it's actually the design of the pages. Like I came up with some ideas for mock-ups early on for when they were designing these pages, and they're still using those mock-ups. Now they have an amazing creative director and design team that like polished it, of course, but yeah, like a lot of the initial design phases I was involved in. And then the next phase is like is in revenue generation, and I've discussed with the founders the 80-20 principle, but it's actually a different principle that I've done my best to like bring forth, which is so the 80-20 principle was popularized by Richard Koch, who wrote another book. His first most popular book before the 80-20 principle was called The Star Principle.
Yes, great book.
And that is where, yeah, I if anyone is in business or is thinking about getting into business and wants a shortcut, like that book is so
phenomenal
huge.
Phenomenal book. I forgot about that book, but that is a phenomenal book.
Yeah,
because it teaches you about what. So basically, the Richard Koch, the guy that you're talking about, he was a consultant at
BCG or Bain or BCG.
Bain and Company, yeah, Bain and Company, and these the two main consulting firms. And I can't think of the other one.
McKinsey.
McKinsey, yeah. These two consulting firms that we're talking about here, they created these principles on how to analyze businesses to find out what makes a star business and how they operate and the key things they have. So by reading this book, Star Principle, which is what Arlin's saying, you'll understand if the business that you're creating could be a star business, and the things that you're doing within your business that could potentially make it not a star, which means that you can't build a defensible moat around your intellectual property, your brand design, or anything like that, which means that your market can be taken and stolen.
Basically, a star business it only has to, what's crazy about it is it's so simple. The star principle is so simple. All a business needs to have to be a star business is it needs to be the market leader in a growing niche. So if your business right now, if you are not the market leader and your niche is not growing, you're setting yourself up for failure. And if I'm advising a company like Hoobe, for example, and what niche are they in? They're in the space. I mean, they could kind of transcend different niches depending on the decisions they make. But let's say they choose to be the link in bio platform tool, right? Like take like a Linktree. There's also Snapfire. There's Beacons. There's lots of link in bio platforms. Linktree is the market leader as far as a link in bio platform is concerned. They have 20 million paying users at $10 a month or more. Hoobe has over 10,000 users, but they don't have 20 million, you know? So it like when I'm looking at any company, I'm asking myself those questions. Is this the market leader? If it's not the market leader, if it's not the leader in that niche, you need to switch niches. You need to somehow become number one in something. And then whatever that something is, whatever that market is, you also need to make sure it's growing. Luckily, the creator economy, more and more people are downloading social media apps and starting social media channels. So the economy itself, the market itself is growing. Is Hoobe the number one link in bio platform? No, not in general. But is it the number one link in bio platform For example, for creators and influencers, arguably yes. And we could look at numbers to back that up. But yeah, I think a lot about these big strategy firms and how they advise their companies, and I try to put my input in alignment with that next to my background in like design and storytelling, and I have meetings, regular meetings with the one of the co-founders once a week, and we just brainstorm back and forth all these kind of ideas. So it's very fun.
What are some other books that you'd recommend this audience listens to and reads?
For business or for self-development in general, or
for the whole suite, like in terms of like your top ones that you'd recommend?
Yeah, I would definitely put STAR Principle and 80-20 Principle at the top there. Obviously, The Power of Now. More recently, I've found myself going back to like the Bible and even the Quran and the Torah. And I think for someone who, like, I wish I went back to those earlier. I wish when I was 19, instead of reading, or watching a lot of like dating and pickup advice videos, I wish I just read the Bible. I swear, man, like and here's a good way to start is to go on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And to tell ChatGPT, you are an expert on the Bible. I'm just telling it, like, you're an expert on the Bible. Give me what I should be looking for in a girlfriend. And it will say, here's like 5 qualities based on the Bible, based on these passages, the qualities you should be looking for in a girlfriend. And that's
right.
That's some powerful stuff.
Yeah, you can get it to summarize it, so you can be like, okay, teach me what the Torah, show me every lesson the Torah teaches about money, because obviously when you look at the Jewish culture and how they accumulate wealth and how they keep it and how they put it to work, it's obviously like the Torah is a phenomenal book for creating wealth in your life, because the principles from it, they in reality, like when you look at the Jewish community, they're not short of £1 or £2, you know what I mean, or $1, are they? Like so there's obviously something within that. So the ethos is there, like you say, it's plain to see. And I used to like not listen to or not want to read these books, but I've actually started to read them too. Like I haven't got a copy of the Torah, but I've got a copy of the Bible, I've got a copy of the Quran, and I'm actively reading things from them to learn, because there's a lot of, I'm not saying that I'm going to step into all this religious stuff and go fully into any of them. I just want to know the teachings of all these religions, because I want to understand it from different levels. Like, okay, what are they teaching about wealth? What are they teaching about relationships? What are they teaching about consciousness and all this kind of stuff? Because there's, like you say, there's a lot of value in understanding books that are thousands of years old, that have been passed through the ages, and understanding the context of what they teach and how they operate. Because if a lot of people that you meet that have had success in life, if they're not highly spiritual, and I'm summarizing success is both accumulating money and keeping it, and also being happy as well. That's how I'm summarizing success. And when you look at the people that are most complete in all areas that I've just mentioned, there's some religious or spiritual component to that, to be able to fully contextualize that whole thing. So what you're saying is true, like in terms of reading that. So what are the key learnings that you've had from that?
I think the key learnings I've had specifically from the Bible. I've been leaning a lot on the Bible, specifically for matters of love and in my relationship. And it's tremendously helped evolve and improve my relationship. Specifically, the Bible talks about like I can go into the Bible or into ChatGPT and say, here's the issue I'm having with my relationship that my girlfriend and I keep arguing about. What would the Bible say about that? and then I just listen to it, and I'm like, oh, okay, done. Like, it works. Surprise! The most famous and referenced text of all time has real actionable advice. Like, where do you think these personal development books on the bookshelf get their advice from? They get it from the Bible. So just go to the source.
The sooner people realize that the connection, your connection with like the universe, with God, or whatever you want to call it, right? Your connection with the higher power or the higher version of yourself, even. There doesn't need to be any gatekeeper between you and that. Do you know what I mean? There doesn't need to be a church. There doesn't need to be a mosque. There doesn't need to be anything between you and that. That's a personal conversation. That's a personal thing between you and it. Like, no one can talk to you about that. That's just a conversation that you have that no one else is privy to. Do you know what
Absolutely.
I'm saying?
Like, would you rather get your food from, from Walmart, which has been passed from the farm, maybe farmer originally, to some like processing, holding, storage plant, to some delivery truck that hundreds of miles, to someone that's putting it on the shelf? Or would you rather just grow your own food? Like, if you had like the resources to be able to do that, or would you rather eat your own food that you grow yourself, or that your neighbor is growing and you can go to a farmer's market and buy it there? I know for me, like, I try to do all my shopping through a farmer's market, local farmer's market, from local farmers that I actually know.
And when you do that shopping through the local farmer's market, as we're on this topic of what you're putting in your body, how have you noticed your clarity in your mind, your skin, and everything else? Has that changed a lot? Have you noticed a lot in changes in that?
I've noticed that, there's certainly a correlation. Now that I really think about it, like, as I've evolved my diet to, instead of, for example, even eating eggs from just your regular white eggs, random eggs from some store that maybe they're just caged, and the energy that maybe is in those eggs is not the most free and pure. As I've transitioned from that to, yes, I spend a lot more money on farmers market eggs, there is a correlation. Like, my life and my values are a lot more aligned, for sure. Yeah.
I was reading the weirdest study like literally a few weeks ago, and it was all about if something's made with love, like in terms of like whether it's food or anything like that, if something's made with the right intention, intention is an energy that goes into things. So there was a study done, and there were intentions that were put into water, and then they put the water under the microscope after the intentions were set within the water, and the whole molecular structure of the water is different by the intention that was sent energetically into the water. I know it sounds weird, but when you see this under a microscope, you can't deny that the energy is real, and that it changes the structure of it. So if that's the truth, then, and you read this study and you find that to be the truth, then the intention that you do everything with, and the people that move with you do everything with, affects everything that you do as well.
I know the study you're talking about, and it's something that I've learned as well, that like 99.99% of what we experience as reality is actually like invisible. It's energy, it's space. The stuff that we see and interact with and feel and touch and our senses interact with is like 0.00001% of what really exists. So, like this raw milk that I'm drinking is there's energy in it, not only from the fact that the fact that it is raw milk, like from the cow, unheated, unpasteurized raw milk, and there's more like life and bacteria in the raw milk. But there's also an energy translation that happens from me feeling better about drinking the raw milk versus drinking the more processed, human-handled, factory-affected milk. And as exactly as you're saying, like the emotions of baking love into something actually affects the chemistry and the way that food makes you feel.
Yeah, mate, and I tell you, I realised it in a lot of areas of my life that it's the intention things are done. It's done for you and the intention of how you do things for others, and all these things, they correlate to a lot of feeling in whether it comes through food, whether it comes through relationships, or however it comes to you. It just all matters. The intention is everything, and the intention you put out is what you get back. It's as simple as that. But Arlin, if there's one piece of if you had to check out the world tomorrow, and there's one piece of golden wisdom advice that from you making millions online, from the videos that you've done, from the life that you've lived, from the spiritual stuff that you've done, if there's one piece of advice and only one piece that you can leave to everybody who's listening to this podcast, what would it be?
It would be don't be attached to things that you've done that have worked in the past, things you've seen other people done. Don't be attached to, as far as like what you think you should do as a man. Like don't be attached to what you see other people are doing or what you think has worked in the past to get you X result. The only thing that you should use as your internal guidance system is that like current present moment relation to God, to that higher power. In other words, find God. In simpler terms, find God, but to add a little nuance to that point in relation to everything we've been talking about here, it's to operate as much as possible off the internal guidance system rather than what everyone else wants you to do, what you think will get you more views, what you think will what your egoic mind thinks will get you the thing to make it look better. Go off the intuition. Go off God.
That's succinct. Yeah. And I think that's been the full narrative throughout this whole conversation with you throughout this, is like the more inward you go, the more your outward reality reflects what you truly want, because you've got it. You can't deny what's inside you, and you can't deny how you want to move and how you want to operate. You can get influenced on the exterior for how you want certain things to look in your life, but that's not actually a true reflection of yourself, which means it takes you towards something that ultimately does not fulfill you in all areas of your life that you want it to, because you've pursued something for the wrong metric. Right. So that's what I want everyone who's listened to this podcast to get out of what Arlin said today, because I think there's a lot of power in that. And I just want to say thank you again for coming on and dropping amazing value. You can follow Arlin on Instagram at Arlin. It's ARLIN. It's nice and easy. You can't miss it. And guys, do me a solid favor. Yeah? Drop me a DM. Let me know how this podcast has gone. Share this on your stories. Share it in the WhatsApp groups. Drop a review. I appreciate all your support throughout this journey, and much love.
Guys, do me a solid favor. Drop a comment below this video and let us know who you want on the podcast next.